A prison alarm echoes in the distance. On a cold November night in 2019, correctional officers at Redwood State Prison discovered cell block D was one inmate short. Marcus Sullivan, serving 8 years for aggravated assault. Model prisoner, expected release in 14 months. But he didn't wait. 18 hours later, police found his wife, Isabella Sullivan, dead in their suburban home, stabbed 37 times. The brutality was personal, rage-fueled, unforgiving. But here's where this story becomes something you've never heard before. Because the truth investigators uncovered wasn't just about murder, it was about identity, deception, and secrets that went back further than anyone imagined. What Marcus discovered behind bars would shatter everything he thought he knew about the woman he married, and what you're about to discover will make you question who the real victim was.
Dark Stories. True crime is your home for chilling crimes, unsolved mysteries, and the darkest secrets the world has to offer. We uncover shocking cases, disturbing truths, and mysterious disappearances. Hit subscribe and join us.
Riverside, California. A quiet suburban town where white picket fences line the streets and neighbors wave to each other every morning. The kind of place where nothing ever happens, where crime is limited to stolen packages and speeding tickets. This was home to Marcus and Isabella Sullivan, a seemingly ordinary couple living an ordinary life. But ordinary was the last thing this story would be. Marcus Sullivan was 34 years old when his world collapsed. A construction worker with calloused hands and an easy smile, he'd built a life he was proud of. He met Isabella online in 2014, a dating app match that turned into coffee, then dinner, then late-night conversations that stretched until sunrise. She was beautiful, mysterious, reserved about her past, but Marcus didn't push. Everyone has wounds they're not ready to show. 6 months later, they were married in a small ceremony, just a few of Marcus's friends and co-workers. Isabella's side of the church was empty. She'd told him her family was estranged, that her childhood was something she'd rather forget. Marcus understood. He came from a broken home himself. Sometimes the family you choose is more important than the one you're born into. For 2 years, they built a life together. Isabella worked as a hospital administrator. Marcus worked construction. They talked about kids, about buying a bigger house, about growing old together. Then everything changed in the spring of 2017, a bar fight. Marcus had too much to drink. A man said something disrespectful about Isabella. Fists flew. The other man hit his head on the concrete. Traumatic brain injury, permanent damage. Marcus was arrested for aggravated assault. 8 years in Redwood State Prison. Isabella promised she'd wait for him. She visited every month. She wrote letters. She put money on his books. She was loyal, devoted, the perfect wife standing by her man, or so everyone thought. Because inside those prison walls, Marcus was about to receive something that would change everything. A letter, anonymous, no return address. Just a manila envelope slipped into his mail during yard time in August 2019. Marcus almost threw it away. Prison gets weird mail sometimes, but curiosity got the better of him. He opened it in his cell that night while his cellmate snored on the bunk below. Inside were photographs, documents, medical records, and a handwritten note that said only 4 words. You deserve the truth. The photographs showed a young man, maybe 18 or 19 years old, athletic build, short hair, masculine features. Marcus didn't recognize him at first. Then he saw the eyes. Those eyes. He'd stared into those eyes 1,000 times. Those were Isabella's eyes. The documents confirmed what his mind was refusing to accept. Birth certificate. Name, Isaac Moreno. Sex, male. Medical records from a gender reassignment surgery clinic in Thailand, dated 2013. Passport records showing travel under both names. Isabella Sullivan had been born Isaac Moreno, and she'd never told him. Marcus's cellmate, a man named Dwayne who'd been locked up for 12 years, later told investigators what happened next. He said Marcus didn't scream, didn't yell. He just sat on his bunk staring at those papers for hours. His hands were shaking, tears streaming down his face. Then, finally, in the middle of the night, he whispered, "My whole life is a lie." For 3 months, Marcus didn't respond to Isabella's letters, didn't accept her calls, didn't show up for visitation. She kept coming anyway, sitting in that visiting room alone, confused, heartbroken. The guard said she looked devastated. She had no idea Marcus knew. She thought maybe he'd found someone else. Maybe he wanted a divorce. She never imagined the truth had found him first. But Marcus wasn't silent because he was processing. He wasn't silent because he needed time. Marcus was silent because he was planning something that would shock everyone who knew him. On November 8, 2019, during a routine prison work detail in the facility's electrical maintenance shop, Marcus Sullivan disappeared. The escape was calculated, methodical. He'd been studying the security protocols for months. He knew which cameras had blind spots, which fences had weak points, which guard rotations changed at which times. For a man who'd been a model prisoner, his planning was disturbingly meticulous. By the time officers realized he was gone, Marcus had a 6-hour head start, and he was headed straight home. Now here's where you might be thinking you know how this story ends. Betrayed husband, secret revealed, revenge murder, open and shut case. But what if I told you the investigators didn't see it that way at first? What if I told you that when Detective Rachel Torres arrived at the Sullivan home on November 9th at 7:42 a.m., responding to a 911 call from a neighbor who heard screaming, what she found didn't match the narrative everyone expected. The front door was unlocked. Not broken, not forced, unlocked. Inside, the living room looked like a battlefield. Furniture overturned, lamps shattered, picture frames smashed on the floor, blood everywhere, splattered on the walls in patterns that told a story of violence and desperation, and in the center of it all, Isabella Sullivan's body. She'd been stabbed 37 times, defensive wounds on her hands and arms. She'd fought back, hard, but here's what didn't make sense. The kitchen knives were all in their block, untouched. The murder weapon wasn't from the house. Marcus had brought it with him, which meant this wasn't a crime of passion. This was premeditated. He'd armed himself before he ever arrived. The security cameras outside the home had been disabled, but not by cutting wires or smashing equipment. Someone had accessed the system remotely and turned them off from the inside. Forensic IT investigators would later determine the system was disabled at 11:47 p.m. on November 8th. Marcus had escaped prison at approximately 4 p.m. that same day. That's a 7-hour gap. Where was he? What was he doing? Detective Torres walked through the scene with her partner, a veteran investigator named James Chen, who'd seen more homicides than he cared to count. They both felt it. Something was off. The violence was extreme, yes, but the staging felt wrong. Chen pointed to the walls. Look at the blood spatter pattern. This is rage, uncontrolled fury. But then look at the exit. No bloody footprints leading out, no trail. Whoever did this cleaned up before they left. They found a bathroom towel in the kitchen sink, soaked with blood and water. Someone had washed their hands, taken time to compose themselves. That's not the behavior of someone in an uncontrollable rage. That's the behavior of someone who knew exactly what they'd done and wanted to make sure they could walk out without leaving an obvious trail. The neighbor who called 911, a woman named Patricia Mills, told police she heard screaming around 1 a.m., high-pitched, terrified. Then silence. She waited, thinking maybe it was the TV, maybe a nightmare, but the silence felt wrong. In the morning, she noticed the front door was slightly open. She called out for Isabella. No answer. That's when she called the police. But Patricia said something else that caught Detective Torres's attention. She said she'd seen a car parked down the street around midnight. Dark sedan, engine running, just sitting there. She didn't think much of it at the time, but now it felt significant. When investigators pulled traffic camera footage from the surrounding area, they found that dark sedan, and they found something else. A second vehicle, a truck, parked 2 blocks away. Registered to Marcus Sullivan's brother, Danny. Now the story was getting complicated. Because if Danny was involved, this wasn't just a revenge killing. This was a coordinated attack. A family affair. Detectives immediately issued a warrant for both brothers. Marcus Sullivan, escaped inmate. Danny Sullivan, possible accomplice to murder. A manhunt began that would stretch across 3 states and reveal secrets nobody saw coming. While forensic teams processed the crime scene, Detective Torres dug into Isabella's life. Who was she really? What else had she been hiding? The investigation revealed a woman who'd meticulously constructed a new identity. She'd legally changed her name in 2013, right after her surgery, sealed her old records, cut ties with everyone who knew her as Isaac, started fresh in California with a new job, new friends, new life. But someone from her past had found her. The question was who, and why did they send that letter to Marcus? Was it revenge, jealousy, or something else entirely? Investigators interviewed Isabella's co-workers at the hospital. Everyone said the same thing. She was private, professional, kind. No one knew she was transgender. No one suspected anything. She'd been living authentically as herself for 6 years. She'd found peace. Until that letter arrived at Redwood State Prison and destroyed everything. Marcus's brother Danny was found 2 days later at a motel in Arizona. He was alone, scared, and surprisingly cooperative. When detectives brought him in for questioning, he didn't ask for a lawyer. He just sat down and started talking. What he told them would shift this entire investigation in a direction nobody expected. Danny said Marcus had called him the night of the escape, around 8 p.m. He was crying, talking about betrayal, about lies, about how his whole marriage was a fraud. Danny tried to calm him down, told him to turn himself in, that killing Isabella wouldn't change anything, but Marcus wasn't hearing it. He said he just needed to talk to her, face to face. He needed to understand why she'd lied. Danny made a choice he'd regret for the rest of his life. He agreed to help, not with murder. He swears he didn't know Marcus was planning to kill her. He just agreed to drive him home, to give him a chance to talk to Isabella, to get closure. Danny picked Marcus up at a truck stop 40 miles from the prison. Marcus was wearing civilian clothes he'd stolen from a donation bin at a church. He looked exhausted, broken. Danny said his little brother looked like a man who'd already died inside. They drove to Riverside in silence. Danny dropped Marcus off 2 blocks from the house around 11:30 p.m. Marcus told him to wait, said he'd be back in an hour. Danny sat in that truck, engine running, waiting. 1 hour passed, then 2. Around 2 a.m., Marcus came walking down the street. His clothes were different. He'd changed. His hands were clean. Too clean. He got in the truck and said only 3 words, "Get me out." Danny drove. He didn't ask questions, didn't want to know. They made it to Arizona before Danny couldn't take it anymore. He dropped Marcus at a bus station and told him he couldn't help him anymore. That's when Marcus told him what he'd done. Danny broke down, called the police, turned himself in, told them everything. But here's where the story takes a turn that would leave investigators stunned. Because when they finally tracked Marcus down 5 days later at a rundown motel in New Mexico, he didn't run, didn't fight. He opened the door, put his hands up and said, "I've been waiting for you." Then he said something that made Detective Torres's blood run cold. "I didn't kill my wife, but I know who did." What happens next will change everything you think you know about this case, because Marcus Sullivan, the escaped inmate everyone assumed was a murderer, was about to tell a story that seemed impossible, a story about conspiracy, about someone else who wanted Isabella dead, about a truth so disturbing that even seasoned investigators struggled to believe it. Marcus sat in that interrogation room, handcuffed to the table, and told his version of events. He admitted he escaped, admitted he went to the house, admitted he was angry, betrayed, destroyed by what he'd learned. But he swore he didn't kill her. He said when he arrived at 11:45 p.m., he used his key, walked in the front door. Isabella was in the living room. She looked terrified. Not of him, of something else. Marcus said she was on the phone. arguing with someone. Her voice was panicked. She said something like, "I told you I'm not doing this anymore. I'm out. Leave me alone." Then she saw Marcus, dropped the phone, started crying. She said, "You know, don't you?" Marcus nodded. She tried to explain, tried to tell him why she'd hidden the truth. But Marcus said he couldn't hear her over the rage in his own head. They argued, screamed at each other. Marcus admitted he shoved her, knocked over a lamp, threw a picture frame. He was out of control, but he said he left, walked out, got in his brother's truck and drove away. He said when he left that house at 12:15 a.m., Isabella was alive, crying, terrified, but alive. Detective Torres didn't believe him. Why would she? Every piece of evidence pointed to Marcus, his escape, his motive, his presence at the scene, but then forensic results came back that complicated everything, the time of death. Based on body temperature, rigor mortis, and lividity, the medical examiner estimated Isabella died between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m. Marcus claimed he left at 12:15. The neighbor heard screaming at 1 a.m. If Marcus was telling the truth, someone else had entered that house after he left. Someone who finished what Marcus had started. But who? And why? Investigators pulled Isabella's phone records. That call Marcus mentioned? It existed, came from a burner phone, untraceable. But they found something else. Text messages, encrypted, sent through an app designed for privacy. The forensic team cracked it. What they found opened up a conspiracy theory nobody saw coming. Isabella had been communicating with someone for the past 6 months. Someone she called M in her contacts. The messages were cryptic. Talk about meetings, payments, threats. In one message from 3 weeks before her death, M wrote, "You can't run from this forever. They know what you did. Pay up or everyone learns the truth." What had Isabella done? What secret was she protecting? Who was blackmailing her? The investigation took a turn into Isabella's past before she transitioned, when she was Isaac Moreno. Detectives discovered that Isaac had been involved in something during his late teens, something criminal. In 2011, when Isaac was 19, he'd been questioned in connection with a fraud scheme, identity theft, stolen credit cards, a network of people creating fake identities and draining bank accounts. Isaac was never charged, turned witness against the others, helped the FBI make several arrests. One of those arrests was a man named Michael Torrance, ringleader of the operation. He got 15 years in federal prison. But here's the chilling part. Michael Torrance was released in June 2019, 3 months before Marcus received that anonymous letter, 2 months before Marcus escaped, 1 month before Isabella was murdered. Investigators brought Michael in for questioning. He had an alibi for the night of the murder. He was at a halfway house with documented check-ins, but that didn't mean he wasn't involved. Detective Torres showed him photos of Isabella, asked if he recognized her. Michael smiled, a cold, calculated smile. He said, "That's Isaac. I wondered what happened to him. Looks like he made some changes." When asked about the murder, Michael said, "I've been locked up for 8 years. Why would I care about some old case?" But his lawyer shut down the interview before they could push further. Michael walked out of that police station a free man. Legally, they had nothing on him. But then investigators found the connection. Michael Torrance had a younger brother, David Torrance. David had never been arrested in the fraud case, never questioned, flew under the radar. But phone records showed David and Michael had been in constant contact since Michael's release, and David's credit card had been used at a gas station in Riverside on November 8th, at 10:47 p.m. The theory came together like a puzzle. Michael gets out of prison, harbors resentment against Isabella for testifying against him, discovers she's living a new life, married, successful, decides she needs to pay, but Michael's on parole, can't risk direct involvement, so he sends his brother. But there was a problem with this theory. Why send the letter to Marcus? Why trigger the escape? Why create chaos? Unless that was the plan all along. Create a perfect scapegoat. Make everyone believe the angry husband did it. Pin the murder on Marcus while the real killer walks away clean. David Torrance was arrested at his apartment in Los Angeles on November 15, 2019. When police searched his home, they found disturbing evidence. A laptop with research on Isabella Sullivan, maps of her neighborhood, photos of her house, her schedule, her movements. David had been stalking her for months, planning, waiting for the right moment. They also found the knife, a hunting blade. Forensic analysis matched blood on the knife to Isabella Sullivan. David's fingerprints were on the handle. DNA evidence placed him at the crime scene. Fibers from his clothing matched fibers found on Isabella's body. The case against David was overwhelming. In interrogation, David finally broke. He admitted everything, said his brother Michael had asked him to handle it, said Isabella deserved what she got for destroying their family. He'd sent the letter to Marcus knowing it would drive him to escape, knowing Marcus would go to the house, knowing it would create the perfect cover story. David had waited until Marcus left. Then he'd entered the house. Isabella was already terrified, already wounded emotionally from the confrontation with Marcus. David said she begged for her life, tried to explain, but he didn't care. He'd come there with one purpose, and he fulfilled it. The murder weapon belonged to David. The burner phone used to threaten Isabella was purchased by David. The blackmail scheme was orchestrated by Michael, but executed by David. They'd drained $50,000 from Isabella over 6 months. When she finally refused to pay more, they decided she had to be eliminated. Marcus Sullivan was cleared of murder charges, but he wasn't free. He still had to serve his remaining prison sentence for escaping, plus additional time for the escape itself. He'd been manipulated, used as a pawn in someone else's revenge plot. His wife was dead. His life was ruined. And even though he didn't kill her, he'd never forgive himself for walking away when she needed him most. David Torrance was convicted of first-degree murder, life without parole. Michael Torrance was charged as an accessory. He got an additional 25 years added to his sentence. Justice was served. But for Marcus, nothing would ever be the same. From his prison cell, Marcus gave one interview to a local news station. His voice was hollow, defeated. He said, "I loved my wife. I don't care what she was born as. I care that she lied. I care that she didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. But most of all, I care that I let my anger put her in danger. I walked out when someone else was coming to kill her. I could have saved her. I could have protected her. Instead, I left her alone. That's something I'll have to live with forever." The neighbor, Patricia Mills, was asked how she felt about everything that happened. She said, "Isabella was the kindest person on this street. She baked cookies for the neighborhood kids. She helped me with my groceries when I hurt my back. Whatever secrets she had, whatever past she was running from, she didn't deserve this. Nobody deserves this." Detective Rachel Torres closed the case file, but admitted it haunted her. She said, "This case taught me that truth has layers. Marcus was a victim. Isabella was a victim. They were both manipulated by people who wanted revenge. In the end, everyone lost. There are no winners in stories like this." So what really happened that night? Here's the timeline as investigators pieced it together. 11:45 p.m. Marcus enters the house, confronts Isabella. They argue. Violence erupts, but Marcus leaves without killing her. 12:15 a.m. Marcus gets in Danny's truck and they drive away. Isabella is alive but injured and traumatized. 12:30 a.m., David Torrance, who'd been watching the house from his car down the street, sees Marcus leave. He enters the house. 1 a.m., David attacks Isabella. The screams Patricia hears are Isabella fighting for her life. David stabs her 37 times. She dies quickly from blood loss and trauma. 1:30 a.m., David washes his hands, changes clothes, stages the scene to look like a rage killing, leaves through the back door. 2:00 a.m., Danny drops Marcus at the bus station. David is already hundreds of miles away. The truth was exactly as complicated as it seemed. Multiple villains, multiple victims, and a justice system that almost got it completely wrong. But there's one more piece to this story, one more reveal that shows just how deep this conspiracy went. When investigators finally accessed Michael Torrance's prison correspondence, they found letters between Michael and someone else. Someone who'd been feeding him information about Isabella, someone who'd discovered she'd transitioned, someone who'd provided the photos and documents that were sent to Marcus. That someone was Isabella's own brother, her biological brother from her life as Isaac, a man named Daniel Moreno who'd held a grudge against his sibling for transitioning, who thought Isabella had betrayed the family, who wanted to see her punished. Daniel had tracked Isabella down, found out about her marriage, contacted Michael Torrance through a mutual friend, provided everything needed to set this plot in motion. When police arrested Daniel at his home in Texas, he showed no remorse. He said, "Isaac abandoned us, abandoned the family, abandoned who he was. I just wanted him to face consequences." Daniel Moreno was charged with conspiracy to commit murder. He took a plea deal, 15 years. So in the end, who killed Isabella Sullivan? Legally, it was David Torrance. His hands wielded the knife. His actions ended her life. But morally? The guilt spreads wider. Michael orchestrated it, Daniel enabled it, and Marcus, unknowingly, provided the perfect cover by escaping and confronting her first. Some people called Isabella a liar, said she deserved consequences for deceiving Marcus. Others called her a victim, a woman trying to live her truth in a world that wouldn't accept her. The debate raged online for months, comment sections filled with arguments about honesty in relationships, about transgender rights, about violence and revenge. But here's what gets lost in those debates. Isabella Sullivan was a person, a human being with dreams and fears and a past she was trying to escape. She made choices, some questionable, but none that warranted murder. Marcus Sullivan was a person too, betrayed and manipulated, used as a weapon in someone else's vendetta. Both of them deserved better than how this story ended. What do you think? Was Isabella wrong to hide her past from Marcus? Was Marcus justified in his anger? Could this tragedy have been prevented? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's have a real conversation about truth, deception, and the consequences of secrets. The case of Isabella Sullivan became a cautionary tale about how revenge can poison everything it touches, about how secrets have a way of surfacing at the worst possible time, about how justice isn't always clean or simple. Detective Torres gave a final statement at a press conference when the case closed. She said, "This investigation reminded me that every case is about people, not statistics, not headlines. People with complicated lives making complicated choices. Isabella Sullivan wanted to be seen for who she was, not who she'd been. Marcus Sullivan wanted honesty from the person he loved. Neither of them got what they deserved, and that's the real tragedy here. In the end, 4 people went to prison. 3 people are dead if you count the relationships and futures that died with Isabella. And one question remains. How do we prevent something like this from happening again? Maybe the answer is simple. Maybe it's about choosing truth over secrecy, communication over silence, understanding over judgment. Maybe it's about recognizing that everyone carries pain from their past and nobody's journey is simple. Or maybe the answer is that some tragedies can't be prevented. Some people are determined to cause harm no matter what, and sometimes innocent people pay the price for other people's hatred. If this story affected you the way it affected us, hit that like button. It helps us share these important stories with more people, and subscribe if you want more deep dives into cases that make you think, make you question, and make you see the world differently. Because stories like this matter. Truth matters, justice matters, and remembering that behind every headline is a real person, that matters most of all. The house where Isabella died was sold 8 months later. The new owners painted over the walls, replaced the floors, tried to erase the violence that had occurred there. But the neighbors remember, the community remembers, and somewhere in a prison cell, Marcus Sullivan remembers every single day. This is the story of an inmate who discovered his wife was transgender, escaped from prison, and went to confront her. But it's also the story of betrayal, manipulation, revenge, and the dangerous consequences of secrets. It's a story with no heroes, only victims and villains whose lines got blurred beyond recognition. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to Isabella's story. And thank you for remembering that behind these true crime cases are real people whose lives matter. See you in the next video.